Hello, my name is Carl Alquist, and today my partner Ayush and I will be explaining the economics of the IMF, also known as the International Monetary Fund.
Firstly, what is the IMF? The International Monetary Fund is comprised of 189 member countries which, according to their website, works to foster global monetary cooperation, secure financial stability, facilitate international trade, promote high employment and sustainable economic growth, and reduce poverty around the world.
In order for the IMF to achieve their goals, they must do certain things. First, surveying countries determines risk and informs the organization on the country's economic policies, as well as national, regional, and global economic and financial developments. Surveillance is an important step in the IMF's methodology and is crucial towards steering the global economy away from financial crises. Providing loans to member countries that are experiencing current or potential default issues is a core responsibility of the IMF. The IMF works closely with the country being affected and aims to either alleviate the issue or stop it from becoming a reality. Some examples of this in the past are during the 2008 recession and more recently with Greece. Along with those responsibilities, the IMF also provides technical assistance and training to help member countries build better economic institutions for stability and growth. This includes, for example, designing and implementing more effective policies for taxation administration, expenditure management, monetary and exchange rate policies, banking and financial system supervision and regulation, legislative frameworks, and economic statistics. All of these aim to better the member country and help grow and boost their economy. To better understand how and why the IMF functions, think of your parents. Your parents look out for you and your future, making sure you don't do anything stupid or dangerous. They may sometimes give you money or help when you're close to or in trouble, and they'll do things to better you as a person, say take you to a museum or pay for your education. All of these things are very similar to what the IMF does, or at least aims to do for its member countries.
In order to get a grasp of what the IMF does and how it will react to future events, it's important to look at past examples. The Great Depression was largely caused by a decrease in world trade due to rising tariffs and trade barriers. Afterwards, countries devalued their currency. The decrease in trade made all countries worse off. After the IMF's creation, the IMF had a system created between 1945 to 1971 called the par value system. The member countries allowed the IMF to be the only one to control the exchange rates. This allowed trade to be freer so that there wouldn't be a repeat of the Great Depression.
Another global crisis that required IMF intervention were the oil shocks between 1972 and 1981. The issue for the first oil shock was that an oil embargo was placed that raised the price of oil from around $3 a gallon to $12 plus per gallon. Globally, this caused an oil crisis and was really the first oil shock that the world saw. The second one was caused by the Iranian Revolution and led to a large decrease in oil output, thus changing the price and leading to another crisis. To solve this solution, the IMF had to survey first and realized that they did not actually have jurisdiction over the countries that were causing the oil shock, and thus lending money was not the right solution to solve it. Instead of offering money directly, the IMF helped develop oil facilities to help oil importers deal with the higher price for gallons. This helped people who needed oil get it and thus stimulate the economy.
Before 1957, there were only 4 countries from the African continent that were part of the IMF. By 1957, a lot of the countries in Africa gained independence, and by then 44 out of the 115 members of the IMF were African. The African countries were some of the least economically developed countries in the world, and they needed assistance both financially and structurally for their economies. The IMF solution for this problem was coordinated financial assistance with other countries, lending money in small amounts in order to foster growth, and giving lots of assistance in the technical aspects of an economy, like how to set up a bank and how to set up loans and creating the whole internal system so that the African economy can thrive. Greece, a bad deal. The background of this situation is that the IMF pledged 125 billion US dollars to bail out the Greek economy despite having serious doubts on whether the Greek government could pay back the IMF or not. The IMF had no plan B, and This plan A had to work in order for the Greek economy to survive. What ended up happening is that Greece defaulted on the loan. Some of the things that the IMF did not take into account was that lending to Greece was a bad idea because they could not pay the debt off anyway. And when a country can't pay off its debts, it's even worse to give loans to them because then they're just more in debt. What ended up happening was that Greek didn't even have a local currency to devalue in order to help them get out of their financial situation, and there was no central bank to shape monetary policy in the region.
Another thing which is very important to understanding the IMF is their driving ideas and how that shapes their policies. One important idea is Keynesian macroeconomics. We learned this in class. Keynesian economics is the various theories about how, in the short run and especially during recessions, economic output is strongly influenced by aggregate demand. Another idea is that of monetarism, which states that inflation can be controlled through fiscal and monetary policy. That shapes their policy very strongly. Thirdly, floating exchange rates. The IMF strongly believes that floating exchange rates are much better than those which are fixed and regulated. Fourthly, letting capital flow more freely with less government control. The IMF strongly believes in a more free market rather than having government control it, thus allowing the market to shape itself. And lastly, the idea that developing policies that lead to a low rate of inflation. This allows for easier control of inflation, which makes it easier on an economy. To better understand all that we've told you about the IMF and their policies and way of going about situations, it's important to look at a hypothetical, such as the Carltopian crisis. This hypothetical country, named Carltopia, their primary export is oil, and unfortunately it is drying up. This, along with large amounts of tax evasion, has led to a slipping economy and leading to recession and close to defaulting on their loans. However, being a member of the IMF does have its perks. The Carltopian government turns to the IMF in search of help, and in response, the IMF has a plan. Firstly, the IMF goes about surveying the situation in order to assess the best assistance they can give. Then, they go about the idea of lending money. The IMF in this situation has decided that giving microloans to boost other exports, such as breakfast sandwiches, would greatly benefit the economy and thus drive it away from the failing export of oil. Then, going towards capacity development in the long term. This would be assisting the country with improving its taxation laws so as to go away from the massive amounts of tax evasion, and also would supervise Carltopian expenditure in banking. There are many more options that can go along with this, however, that would be decided in the future. In conclusion, it can be determined that the IMF, while having its faults and its good sides, is extremely important to the global economy, due to it promoting international monetary cooperation, facilitating the expansion and balance of growth of international trade, promoting exchange stability, assisting in the establishment of multilateral system of payments, and making resources available with adequate safeguards to members experiencing balance of payment difficulties. Therefore, the IMF assists greatly in our economy and is very crucial towards bettering it. Thanks for watching!